So, this is a packed session. That's good. We will talk about the little topic of AI. Please, gentlemen. I'm sure most of you have heard about AI. If I were going to ask each and every one of what your perception of AI, I would get so many different answers. But I'm not going to do that. We will have a esteemed panel here today, and we'll have some questions and a lot of interaction, I hope. So my name is Nocke. I'm a director for LTIMindtree. I'm sure most of my Indian colleagues have heard about that company. It's part of a very big Indian group. We talked about Made in India. L&T, Larsson, they are actually building up India, the real infrastructure, roads, and also there was a lot of gentlemen from the cement industry. We are definitely a big customer of yours, etc. But I represent LTIMindtree, which is the digitalization and IT subsidiary of that group. Enough about that. Today, I have a lot of very smart people with me here. Let me start with Micael Larsson from Microsoft. One short note about Micael is, you remember Windows 95? Some of you do. That's when Micael started at Microsoft. So he's been there for a long period of time and knows everything there is to know about Microsoft, more or less. Then I have Østergaard here, a man that represents a business or a company that existed in Sweden for more than 400 years, PostNord. It can't be easy to drive innovation in AI for a company that is 400-year-old, but I'm sure you're the man to do it. Continuing, we have Sujay Dutta here, the man that represents anything and everything data, because without data, AI wouldn't work. He has also a lot of experience with Indian startups and such. And finally, we have Mr. Naresh here. Naresh has a vast experience and vast network because he's represented both as a consultant, as an advisor, and also been part of the industry. And of course, lived in Sweden for many, many years. You represent the best of both worlds, both India and Sweden as such. So from that perspective, we have representatives from the industry, from the advisory community, and from the product and technology perspectives as well. So we'll get different dimensions to some of these questions. Let me start off with the first kind of questions. What are the key challenges facing AI implementation in industry transition? And how can these be addressed by the tech ecosystems in India and in Sweden? So who want to go first? I can start with Sujay. Do you want to go first? Well, let's have a little bit of interaction here as well.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I'm audible. I think by my introduction, you have given the cue that I'm going to talk about data, right? So I think that's the key challenge. And the range of the challenge is very significant because when you have AI, you have to get a holistic view of your data. I have some reports where, say, maybe a company is just scratching 5% of its data for its initiatives. But when you have to drive your AI initiative, you have to get a holistic view of data. And many of the companies here in Sweden and even in India might be struggling with your older way of doing things where data is much scattered. So that's one, the volume of data that you need to go get for your AI initiatives. But then also the variety of data. Normally, you are dealing with data that is in your ERP systems, manufacturing systems. But when you come to AI initiatives, you have to capture so much social media data, photos, videos. These are called unstructured data. So get that variety of data as well. And third, I will say the velocity and speed, because AI also needs to consume data with a higher speed. So how you are able to bring in the velocity of data. And combining with this, when the complexity is increasing, then you get problems with data quality. Because if you feed in bad data to your AI, it will have very devastating effects by giving you wrong outcomes, unethical outcomes. We have heard of hallucination as terms. So all these feeds from data. I think I'll pause there, Christer, but I think data is one of the key challenges. I'll let others contribute.
Yes. Micael, what's your perspective from a Microsoft? Data is important, that we understand. Yeah. Copilot is something you're pushing hard right now, so is that the future?
Yeah, definitely. Our ambitions from Microsoft with Copilot is, of course, to democratize access to AI and modern AI services. But first, I would like to agree with what you said. lack of access to data or possibly data not structured or in order. That is, of course, a big challenge when looking at modern AI solutions. Another challenge I see is that in many organizations, senior management and executives, they don't always necessarily understand neither the potential benefits of AI or the need of doing lots of plumbing work to make sure that data is ready to be used by AI services. So I would say that we need to see more education also of senior management and executives to gain this understanding and also to dare to take the investments in all the plumbing that needs to be done.
Naresh, Christian, what's your take?
Yeah, I agree with both Sujay and Micael. The education part, I think, is very, very important. If you look at the AI and data, and look around how many organizations have really done serious initiatives around data transformation. There are only few that have done serious transformations. And one reason behind that is lack of education. People just don't understand on why this is important. They are happy consuming the data. It has been that way. So education is one part that is very important. The other part, I think I will add more from the advisory angle, that ethical use of AI. There are guidelines from EU on this. And the broader ecosystem, and I include all the innovators from India here as well. There has to be an alignment to that guideline as well on how and in what way you can use AI and data initiatives following those guidelines. They may not be the same guidelines world over. EU has its own guidelines.
I can only concur with what's said here. I think when we took a drastic step towards sustainability in our organization, we actually had to educate our C-level, which meant that we over quite a long time actually spent time with them to understand what do we understand about sustainability and what all the words that we hear and stuff like that. And I actually personally think that we should do the same thing when it comes to AI. I think many of the times when you discuss the AI, it's been something that is generated by the media, and there are pros and cons. I remember in the beginning when I started to more firmly address AI in our company, I would say the media was quite negative. It was more about focusing on all the bad things that AI could bring. Instead of looking at all the positive things. I'm generally a very positive person, so I try to figure out on how I can break the ice and how we can benefit from it. I will also supplement to what you said in that sense. Yes, we have tons of data. We have unstructured data. We have no metadata. We have it stored in many different places where we are not able to find it when we need it. And we have these data owners which are not willing to share. So we have also that. But we also have possibilities with the new technologies as AI to generate data we never had before. And especially when it comes to computer vision, I see enormous possibilities in generating data and creating blue oceans of data, which we never had to take any decisions before. So we have actually done some trials there and seen some astonishing productivity gains by creating data where we didn't have data before. So I think that there is a lot of things happening in this area.
I think I totally concur with you. There is a data for AI, and then there is AI for data, right? So, and AI that's very beautiful. It's not only for data. You can apply it to many domains. There is people for AI, and then there is AI for people, right? We're talking about culture change and everything, skilling of people. So people skills are needed to progress AI, but then you can turn it around and say AI skills are also needed to develop skills in people much faster that we can see in today's economics. And if I may take one more perspective, if you may allow, we talk about AI as a buzzword today, but if we know AI as a concept was started by Mr. Alan Turing, something in a paper in 1950s, which was titled, Can Machines Think? So it's not a new concept today. It has been there for many places, and I am sure many modern industries, companies like Saab and Volvo and others, have already have application of AI on their shop floor. But what is happening today, and the buzz is because of democratization of AI. AI has come to our fingerprints of our kids who are using AI, and that's why it's become an important topic. And much like Sweden and India are having key democratic spirits, and we understand the benefits and potential downsides of democracy, similar is that AI. So we should treat that, and I totally agree with you. That's an opportunity for the next generation to take it forward.
Interesting. For those who were here in the morning, you heard Peder Wallenberg actually providing his insight in how to, or what to look for when they make the investments, which was quite interesting because he mentioned two things. From a Swedish perspective, very much technology. Sweden is a very innovative country, right? And from an India perspective, it was scalability. I want to, address those things going into the next question. How can India's and Sweden's tech ecosystems collaborate to create a global model that is AI-driven and also sustainable? Why is that important? I think every one of us understands that it's, it's very interesting technology, but it also needs to be sustainable. In addition to that, how would we manage talent scarcity? And how would we, provide access to the same here, since we now hopefully can see if we can cooperate even better between the Swedish ecosystem and the Indian ecosystem. Gentlemen, and the perspective? Naresh, you want to start? Kick it off?
Sure. Yeah, there are, I think, two parts of it. One, there is something which we, on an ongoing basis, we have been dealing with it. So innovation mindset, innovation atmosphere and environment, and the scalability. I think we all know the scalability is not a question when you collaborate with India. Huge possibilities on the scalability, and if we combine the innovative mindset and the environment in Sweden with the scale that comes from India, there are no stoppings. You can achieve whatever you aim and wish to over a period. That's one part. The second part, which I think if there are state representatives here, they can take a note or we can channel it to them, is that after the 2018 security legislation in Sweden and all the geopolitical things that have been happening in the last few years, most of the critical sectors in Sweden, as well as the public sector, has an additional demand of security vetting on people that become part of the core infrastructure or core technology. Now, when you look at the scale from India, the organizations that will participate in the scale up, they can handle the people and process-related part of that security vetting. But there is still no structured framework between Swedish and Indian government that helps and supports it. And I have seen in many of my advisory assignments in the last few years that we have had fantastic capabilities and scale, but we haven't been able to use them because of this lack of framework. So both of them, I think, needs to be in consideration.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to these things, but I think also we have to look at the possibilities. And the sense is that from a sustainability point, Sweden and Nordics is quite far ahead in many cases because it's also driven by the government and our owner, that we have a sustainable agenda. And in that sense, when we work together with companies from India and use the technology drive that we can get from there, I see that we are actually developing something that is already good on top of something that is good. So it means that we are actually creating some quite interesting things. Just to give you an example, we were challenged by, when you come to the carbon footprint, we of course do a lot of things when it comes to last mile, and there's a reason for that, because it's feasible. One of them, it is feasible because of some investments in electrical vehicle, but we are looking into all kinds of others to supplement that. It could be route information in order to make sure that we drive the few kilometers and stuff like that. But the biggest carbon footprint is in the mid-mile. This is where we go from terminal to terminal, typically in our network, and it's an area where there's no electrical vehicle, there's nothing to do that. So how can we actually work on that? Yes, so what we've done is we actually built tools in order to make sure that we can do truck utilization and the fill rates of the trucks based on computer vision. We have built digital twins in order to make sure that we can optimize the network as much as possible. So in that sense, this is done together with intelligence from India. And I think these are, when I go out and speak about these things, yes, these are typical things you could scale, of course. And I think that we could never do it ourselves. And that's also why in some of the cases where we are first in having this solution amongst the fill rate, we are trying to, together with our partner, to sell that on a more global scale. So there are possibilities in collaboration for sure.
Micael, Microsoft collaboration?
Yeah, I agree fully here with what you're saying. I would like to add also that from a skilling perspective, organizations need to strategically think about what kind of skilling is it that we should build. Instinctively, if you're an engineer, you want to run out and start learning everything about AI, from technology and deep down how it works. But what I'm arguing is that most organizations should focus on learning how to adopt the capabilities of AI to your own business processes and your own business, because that is what can make a competitive advantage. The one who is fastest in turning ideas into reality gains a competitive advantage, whereas technology itself is not necessarily what you need to skill up around. That's where the tech ecosystem comes in. So any organization should think about, how should I create my AI and innovation muscle? And I would say that 80% of that muscle is something you can bring in from the tech ecosystem. You should focus on understanding the possibilities, and you should focus on creating a good innovation process and work strategically with your capability of turning ideas into solutions. And that is not by knowing every detail about the technology itself, but focusing on the business.
So I will be jumping into the next question, and Sujay, you can be the first off there. So what would be the key players in an ecosystem in this transition into AI? We're moving into AI more and more, and some people believe it's a hype, some believe it's not a hype. But I think one thing we can agree on, it will change things, right? So what would be your kind of perspective if we look at our governments, our politicians? What are your expectations? Also coming back to Naresh's point here about, are we lacking a framework between India and Sweden on a higher level? Do you have any perspective on these things?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll take a cue from what Micael said, and one of the key players is the technology ecosystem, without a doubt. But towards that, and also taking from Naresh's point, I think Swedish companies today, and I was listening to Svara Larsson from Swedish Chamber of Commerce in India talking about the Swedish companies has been more focused on, or as a trend, working with the larger IT companies in India, but coming with experience from the startup ecosystem, there's significant startup innovation happening. So that I believe, and that will also give speed of adoption for the companies. So I think that's one of the key players. The startup companies in India who are taking significant steps in AI, so Swedish companies should look at it. And then with companies to the framework, I think between the governments and learning from the EU AI Act, if India and Swedish government could leverage that as a framework, and at least between these two countries develop a collaboration framework where knowledge and skills and resources, both in terms of skills delivery virtually or even physically, as Naresh was saying, people that needs to be brought in here. So if that framework could be eased. And the third, I would say, is the academia. I know some representatives of KTH I've seen here, talk to some of them, they are here. And I have heard Swedish companies collaborating with the IITs, the NITs of India. So if there could be an academic collaboration as well to fast forward the AI innovation that could be brought to this, both India and Sweden. And I think let others add to that.
Well, I again concur. It's good to sit in a group of guys that concur quite a lot. But I think that when I look at it, I have one thing that have gained, where I have gained a lot of knowledge, and that is looking cross-industry. I think that's something that we forget. We tend to stay in our silos and look at what everybody else is doing in the silos. I think when it comes to AI, it has been a great gift for me to actually open up and see what other industries are doing. I would say, is we are not a fast follower. We are tried to say that we are fast follower, but it goes pretty slow once in a while. But I spend quite a lot of time in looking into the manufacturing industry in Germany to see what they are happening. I'm looking into what's happening in healthcare in other countries. I'm looking into what's happening in retail and stuff like that, because a lot of industries are looking into different angles on when it comes to using AI. And I think that the thing that we forget is that it's actually quite easy. You know, there was some years ago when we read these business learning books that we talked about benchmarking, and we learned from other industries and how to do that. I think we've forgotten that on the way. But when it comes to AI, I think it's definitely something we should look more into, that we actually can get information from other industries. I think also one thing that I want to say when I'm here is, like, the postal industry is a little bit special because in many cases we are not competing against each other. We have our own domain areas where we are staying, and this is giving us an opportunity to share. And one thing when it comes to new technology is actually to share what you find, also share data, but also to share ideas, discuss because more of us, we sit in the same problem. And in that sense, we have created in the postal world something we call Connect to Post, where we actually get startups to meet us as one platform, because it can be quite difficult to work with us. We are quite cumbersome in decision taking and so on. But you have a possibility to come into this network and present your things across, and maybe one of us jumps on it, and then we try to work on it. And I can say there was 2 years ago, it was an Indian company that won our competition, which we have yearly. So there is definitely possibilities also to grasp the startup community as well.
Okay, just jumping in here. So that's interesting. So PostNord, a Swedish company, actually worked with Indian startups, and one of those Indian startups won, correct? So that's interesting. I think for those who were here in the morning, Deputy Prime Minister Bush, as well, Ebba Bush, mentioned her belief was there was 75,000 startups in India. So the question is, from a Swedish point of view, how do we leverage that? Because out of those 75,000 companies, of course, there will be a lot of smart and interesting ideas, for not at least within an AI. And we spoke about cross-pollination here. So Naresh, from your point of view, being an advisor, do you see any, how does cross-pollination, do you see any examples of that? Or do you see that kind of what's happening in the industry, how to leverage AI across different industries?
I see one of the best things that Sweden brings is, despite competition, the ability and willingness to collaborate and cooperate. We all are using Bank ED, Swish, Bank Giro, and all of that. These are all created by banks who compete with each other, but they came together to collaborate, to create something which is good for the society, good for people, and good for the business in the end. And if that could be extended to what Christian said about different sectors have already done things in AI, sustainability, and they should be, brought together in some kind of a forum. Okay, so like what kind of a forum we have. If there are forums that bring together all the things that have been done in the AI data, sustainability, in Sweden, I'm sure there are things done already in manufacturing, in the space sector, in cybersecurity, And if they could be brought together in a common forum, then people start learning, and not every organization has to go through the whole cycle of reinvention. So from my perspective, there are tremendous opportunities to collaborate, cooperate, share, and learn from each other before you have to reinvent something else. And in that forum, it's very easy to invite the Indian startups. And I know from my conversations with Business Sweden, I think they are doing a lot of work in identifying such startups which are interested in collaborating and sharing their knowledge with Sweden and Swedish society. So the collaboration, I think, is the key here.
Thank you, Naresh. Moving into the next question. What would you, gentlemen, say are the kind of the next big steps we need to undertake to move into a future where we can combine economic growth, adoption of AI, but also not the least, of course, the environmental sustainability? So from a Microsoft point of view, Micael, what would you say are the next steps you're working with right now?
It's continued democratization of technology. Development is happening at an enormous pace right now. And we are, of course, doing our best to get technology out there and to make it more or less commodity. And that's what's fascinating, because generative AI is more or less commodity today. And what's the latest today is 2 generations old just in 6 months from now. So I think us and the other major tech companies, we need together make sure to bring all this innovation out there and make it available as soon as possible. But we also need to see nations and cooperations between nations incentivize a sustainable use of AI. So I think that sometimes a market economy doesn't necessarily create the optimal business model. Sometimes we see lock-in effects because organizations try to protect what they have, and that sometimes hinders collaboration. So I think that nations together and big organizations, they need to be incentivized and incentivize all initiatives that goes towards collaboration and sharing of data and information.
Sujay, if I may jump over to you, as we heard Micael saying, cooperation, coming back to you since you're, all things data in a way. So what are you seeing as the next big steps? Because without proper data, we spoke about the quality and importance of data, structured versus unstructured data. At the same time, shouldn't this AI be able to just invent itself kind of thing, or what's your perspective on the next big steps?
No, I think that's a perfect thing. To solve the complex problem of sustainability, and you take example of CSRD2 and others, where I think Volvo in one of the previous sessions talk about collecting data from their tier 4 suppliers. So imagine the amount of data that you need to handle, and we were listening to the previous session from Emirates where they're talking about using sustainable fuel. So all these needs a lot of significant research, lot of data capturing and processing of data. So I truly believe that AI is a significant tool that will be leveraged to speed up our adherence to sustainability or complying to regulations or complying to net zero standards or timelines for each organization. Because ultimately you can take a view of that is a data problem, and if you are able to process data faster, securely by leveraging AI as a tool, maybe AI is one of the answers to speed up the timeline goals for sustainability. Take the example, I think we heard from IKEA talking about reducing water consumption for cotton growth one suppliers in India. So if you are able to capture so much data about it and how you are able to drive down the consumption of water by giving insights from data, what is the right time to water the plants, which plants needs underwatering and what kind of conditions can grow. So I think AI would be a significant tool, just to give an example. But it could come in, we heard from Emirates about high price of sustainable fuel for their aircrafts. Maybe AI could help in that to drive down the cost of the sustainable fuel faster than the standard guidelines.
Interesting. Christian, Naresh?
Yes, and I believe that the AI can do that. And I think it's a question about also willingness to share data from us. I've been constantly having discussions about, are you willing to share some data? And I always look at it two ways. Yes, but why do I have to be first to give my data away?
Why is that such a big problem, being first?
Yeah, I don't know, but we discussed it also about infrastructure. When we talk about when you work with AI, you sometimes have to build an infrastructure, and you always have to make the first ROI pay for the infrastructure, which is not true. And that's why we need to figure out good models for the future on how we develop our companies, where we look at this type of infrastructure of building a platform for AI or whatever, how we do it, as something that we can share over the use cases that we find. For there's no doubt about it, when we start looking and getting a use case, it will generate a lot more. And we see that. I've seen this with my own eyes, that when I come out with some ideas about what we can use AI for, I'm getting surrounded by people, and they come up with, well, can we see this as well? Can we do that as well? And yes, we can. And I always have to break, because now let's solve the problem that we were here for solving. But there are so many opportunities, and I think that is some of the things that we have to look at in how do we actually start to finance these things. Because I think the idea that we have to not finance it as an infrastructure, I think is a wrong thing, and I think it actually will slow us down compared to the ones that can afford to take that decision.
So, interesting aspects. We're moving towards the end of this session, right? So we've heard a lot of, good and interesting things. Anything from, there seems to be a lack of governance framework between the countries. So something, if there are some governmental or politicians here, might be something to look into. All the way of actually being, as you rightly said, let's be positive about this kind of, future technology. We've just taken the first kind of steps as such, right? So, gentlemen, if you have one or two words as the final words around before we end. Naresh, do you want to go first? What's the key message?
Yeah, I would say education. Get educated, what we started with from Micael, your side. I think we all need to have that so that we know what AI adaptation we need to have. And second is very simple. Please bring your data in control. AI only works on top of it.
Thank you. Micael?
I would say go out there, start creating the first solutions for your ideas and work iteratively. Start exploring, because once you start explore the possibilities, then you will find 10 new ideas. You need to start exploring this for real. That's my key message.
Thank you. Sujay?
I think I would like everyone to dream. Imagine you were way back, whichever year was, I don't remember, when Wright brothers were trying out airplanes to fly. And you are sitting there and watching them to fly. I think many of you will be skeptics. Hey, that will not fly. That's so scary. I'll never get on there, right? Now fast forward in the same scenario. That's happening with AI. So initiatives are happening. But it doesn't mean that aircrafts don't fail. Aircrafts get hijacked, to a negative, or they might crash. But still, we are flying every day, and that is our way of living. So I think fast forward ourselves 10, 15 years, AI will be part of everyone's lives, and we will be living with AIs with some downsides, which is a true form of democracy that happens in India and Sweden.
Thank you. Christian, will we fly?
Yes, I will say that start solving with the problems. Don't try to make AI not, don't have a problem with AI. Try to figure out what it is that you want to solve. What is the job that we need to do? Not just to force AI down our throat. No, but go out and talk to people. What kind of problems do they have? I can promise you today, with the technologies which we have in our hands, we can solve almost everything. It's just a question of combination, putting the different technologies together. And just go out and talk to the people that have problems.
Thank you. Big applause for the panelists, please. So, thank you so much.